This is a Dell Optiplex. It happens to have an i5 6500 in it. Unless you've been hiding under a rock, you know by now that come October, the support for Windows 10 will go bye-bye. It's still a decent PC. It's 4-core, 4-thread, and has 16 gig of DDR3 memory. But, yeah, it's not going to have any support. So we got to figure out what to do. And you might be thinking, okay, I'm just going to have to chuck this or move over to Linux or do something else. And we have tested this with Bazite, which is a pretty decent system. It's a pretty decent Linux system where you can play games. But there might be another option. We might be able to go with Windows 10 long-term service, the LTSC. And that means that we'll have support through 2027. And we'll still be getting updates for another 2 years. That gives us a little bit longer to figure out what we're going to do. There is an Internet of Things edition, IoT edition, that has support longer, but it might only be another couple years if we're constantly using this before things start going bad on it anyway, or we just start upgrading it, or whatever the case is. In the meantime, we can do some stuff. All right, so this is an Optiplex with an i5 6500 in it. Now, you might realize that the 6500 is not supported by Windows 11, which is kindly going to phase out Windows 10. Well, if you're looking at this anytime other than September or October of 2025, in about 4 weeks, we're going to be done with, Windows 10 updates for older hardware. Now, it still could be good. So what we've done is we've thrown in a little 256 gig drive, and we're going to install Windows 10 Long-Term Service Edition. So right now, it's being installed on a Rufus, by Rufus on a USB drive, and we're going to put this back together, and we're going to see if we can install that and get it going. And Rufus is doing his magic to make this a bootable ISO for the Windows Enterprise LTSC edition. So we will get that going in just a few minutes here. As soon as this finishes up, we'll start installing. All right, so as we begin our setup here, there are a few things that I did select when I was making the ISO, and that's to use the region, to turn BitLocker off, and a few of those things. And so we're going to go ahead and go through this, see where it leads us, and then we'll do some testing. Okay, and we're presented with two different features, or two different options, LTSC and NLTSC. We're going to choose the LTSC because I'd rather still keep the media player and all that stuff on here. And the N version takes all that stuff off. All the media related stuff, it takes off. So we're going to leave it on. All right, now I've got to do some updates and downloading Chrome and stuff like that. But this comes with a very, very trimmed down set of programs or whatever already installed. And you can just see Google just popped up there. But this comes very, very trimmed down. There's only a few things that come pre-installed in this version. So I'm continuing. One thing to keep in mind if you're trying to save like an old Optiplex, especially if it has an asset tag on it, it probably belonged to a school, a hospital, an office building or something like that before, which means it may have already had Windows 10 Enterprise, which means that it may already have a serial number for the version of Windows that's not going to work. So you are going to have to buy a separate key. And as you see here, obviously it can't activate the device because, it at one time belonged to somebody else with a different product key, and it's just not going to work. Now, just because you don't have a product key doesn't mean that it's not still going to work. You'll still have the Activate Windows little watermark down in the bottom corner, and it will still operate just the same as any other Windows version. I say just the same. It's an enterprise version, so it's going to operate a little bit smoother in some respects. It's going to maybe not quite as efficient in gaming because of some of the optimizations that the regular version, home version, or pro version might have. But you know what? It's still going to do a pretty good job. We don't have to worry too much, and it doesn't come with a whole lot of bloat. There's hardly any programs. I installed Chrome, and there's not a whole lot going on here. I installed Cinebench, and we'll get to that later. But you're still going to have a pretty good experience with this for another 2 years. And no, this thing's not going to win any kind of speed contest. You can see that it sits below Core i7. Well, of course, that's a laptop, but then you've got a couple other i7s. But still, it's hanging in there all right. It's 4-core, 4-thread. It is DDR3, so it's going to run just a little bit slower. But unless you're doing hardcore gaming or something, if you're just doing normal run-of-the-mill type stuff, this is going to still run pretty well. I mean, but does it really deserve to be put out to pasture just because it's older? No. Windows 11 seems to think that it needs to spy on you a whole lot more, and you need a Microsoft account, and maybe you don't need all those things. Maybe we just need an Enterprise Edition for Windows 10 and keep it a little bit longer. I don't know. I mean, you guys let me know down below what you think.
All right, now, so it wasn't all like sunshine and rainbows trying to do this. There are some things that did not work quite as well as maybe I'd hoped they would work. It's still a very worthy project, especially if you've got something like an older CPU that you're trying to hang on to for a little bit, and you can't put it on Windows, or if you do a workaround, you can get Windows 11 on it. But otherwise, we're stuck with Windows 10, or maybe going to a Linux version or something like that. There are plenty out there. But I chose to go ahead and try to do the long-term service edition of Windows 10, and it worked out pretty well. Now, I did try some games. We will talk about those benchmarks in just a moment, but let me talk real quick about getting this version. As you saw, the product key does belong to another entity, I guess you could say. It was probably a school or a hospital or an office building or something. So you would have to go and buy another key. As far as finding the ISO, that is not something that Windows just puts out there on their website. So I'm not going to tell you exactly what I did, but I will tell you the Internet Archive is a wonderful thing. Okay, so yeah, check there. Make sure you check your resources, or make sure you get it from a trusted source or whatever. There are plenty of places you can buy a CD key, okay, or a product key. I'm not going to recommend one. There are several out there that other YouTubers, a lot more established than I am, have sponsored by, and there are several out there that should be pretty big names. So you should be able to find a Windows key without too much trouble. It is something that it is going to add a little bit more life to the PC, so it shouldn't be too bad. Now let's talk a little bit about if you're trying to keep this as some kind of little gamer. We did mention that we were using that single slot RX 6400 that we've tested before. Not a great card, but I made an observation about this because it's only got 4 gig of memory. That's not a whole lot. It's not going to be a whole lot of VRAM, and it's going to keep some games from playing at all, or you can be very, very limited in your settings. But there's a little bit different caveat here that will lead me into something near the end of the video where I start talking. It's not a horrible card, and one thing I realize is because they have ray tracing on this, and they have ray tracing on that RTX 3050 and a couple other cards that are bottom of the barrel, and you would think, why do that? There are a lot more games out now, first-person shooters, obviously, adventure games, even esports games that require you to have some form of ray tracing. We still might be able to use this card where it would not launch on, say, a 1070 or a 1660 because of the ray tracing being a requirement. Now, a couple of those, I don't know how well we're going to be able to look at, say, Marvel Rivals. I know we were getting a whole whopping 9 frames per second on the 1030, and it actually looked fairly smooth, even though it wasn't moving very quickly. When I ran it on this card with this setup, it told me that I needed to upgrade the CPU. It didn't say anything about the GPU. It did tell me my video memory was low, but it said the CPU was the problem, and it was a stuttery mess. So that led me to think maybe we should try this card and the 3050 with something a little bit beefier. Hence the 12400 back there. That's the setup that's got the 12400 in it. And so we will check those cards with that to see if games, Black Myth Wukong or Monster Hunter Wilds or Marvel Rivals or some of these games will play well, even though they've got beefed up requirements that some form of ray tracing is almost mandatory in some of these games. So we'll give those a shot. What's the worst that can happen? We put the settings way low and we tried at 720p or 900p, but we'll look at that in a further video. As far as this went, the reason why I'm going to put these charts up here it was a little bit mixed. When I first did this, I was getting Shadow of the Tomb Raider was giving me the exact same numbers, almost frame for frame, as I did when I was testing this setup against the Bazite build that I did with this setup. It was almost frame for frame. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to tell them to go look for that video if they want to know what kind of performance it did. Then I got to Borderlands, and Borderlands was actually about 10% better. Then I went to Cyberpunk, and it was almost exactly the same. And then I went to CS2. Again, it was better. So, where it was getting like 88 frames per second and the original build with this. And I left the drivers exactly the same. I even got the little warnings that said, your drivers are out of date. You upgrade them. No, I wanted to use the same exact driver, and that's what I did. So, and it turns out I got about a 10% uplift in this. Now, Monster Hunter Wilds still wouldn't run because, and it might be due to the CPU instead of the GPU, which I thought it was. But it did run in Bazite, so I don't know. But I'll go back and kind of look and discover that. But when I did run Marvel Rivals, it told me the CPU was the problem with that. Black Myth Wukong was a different thing because when I did it on high, it looked kind of a mess. It was it was really trying to take advantage of some frame gen and all that, and it wasn't very good. But when I went down to 1080p low, it actually didn't look horrible. I mean, obviously it was trying to use some smoothing and whatever, but it wasn't horrible, and it ended up with a pretty decent result, which was very, very surprising. I would not have thought that with this combination. I would not have thought that with the RX 6400 at all. Especially not because it's only 4 gig of VRAM. So that was very, very surprising. I don't guess I should be surprised. That game seems to have been optimized very well in a very short amount of time, unlike anything on the Unreal Engine 5. No, I'm not going to benchmark Borderlands 4. Borderlands 3, yes, we used. I'm not going to do Borderlands 4 because it is a hot mess. It's like ice cream on pavement on a hot July day. It's just, I mean, as soon as it gets there, it's done. And not until they do some refinement. I mean, I remember how long it took for them to get CD Projekt Red to get Cyberpunk to be sort of matured like fine wine. And they've done a great job on that. If I'm honest, I don't know if I see the same thing happening with Gearbox, and with I think it's Gearbox that still does Borderlands 4. I know they do Borderlands 3, but I don't know if I see the same thing happening with Borderlands 4. So it might be a while before that gets into my benchmark suite. I will keep Borderlands 3, the DX12 version of it, and of course I will mix in some of these other games. Undecided about some other games like the Indiana Jones or anything like that. I don't know. I am going to be paring these benchmarks down, though. Something where I'm going to be focusing on either, say, 1080p high, 1440p high, depending on hardware, or if it's a lower-end hardware, trying to target around 60 frames per second, unless I really have to just target 30. So we'll mix a few things up, and we'll see if that is easier to test, for one, makes more sense in a video for 2, and more entertaining for 3, more engaging. But in any case, this setup turned out okay. Was it everything I expected it to be and more? Actually, it surprised me that it did as well as it did, and it surprised me that some of the games performed better than when I did just on Windows 10 Pro. It was a nice surprise, and like I said, when I started doing this, I thought they were going to be exactly the same, and I was just going to refer back to that other video, which I'll put up there. But in this case, I did get, on the average, in the games that the games that I did get an improvement, at about 10% or so. So it's not horrible, and well worth it. And like I said, Black Myth Wukong was a total surprise. So there you go, a way to save some of these PCs that are going to be ending their update life next month sometime. So if it's the Windows 10 Long-Term Service Edition. You can find it if you Google, and like I said, Internet Archive is your friend. There are CD keys out there. I'm not going to tell you which ones to go try find or how much to spend or anything like that. But it is a way to keep this older hardware that otherwise you'd have to do some workarounds or move to a different operating system around for a little bit longer. So if you got anything out of the video, go ahead and throw a thumbs up or a like on it if you don't mind. If you're not already subscribed, please do. I'd love to see that. Let's kick this thing back off again. Let's go for about $2,500 to $3,000. I know we got a ways to go. My channel flatlined for a little while, and I'll be honest, I got a little discouraged. But hey, we're here, we're back, we're going to do this and put some effort into it and see what happens. In any case, if you don't do that, if you don't like or subscribe or hit me up on the other socials or anything, please at least just do me one favor, and that's be good to each other. Be kind. Smile, wave, hold the door open. Being kind doesn't cost anything. And now we're about to go into the holidays. I'm already seeing Christmas ads. But anyway, we're about to go into the holidays, and we all just need to be, a little bit more tolerant, a little bit nicer, and treat each other well, okay? So do that for me if you don't mind. And until I get myself into something I got no business getting into, namely this back here, there's another rig sitting right beside it that's got a 7500, an i5 7500, and then I've got an i7 7700. I will do some tinkering, not necessarily with a video in mind, just to get some more information. But until the 12400 we're going to play with. But anyway, until I get myself into something I got no business getting into, that is all I have for this time. So I'll see you later.